it is consolidating right now. What you have to understand is that what really brought gold up is geopolitical. So, I learned that back in the 80s. Gold had gone from 100 to 400 between 76 and 79, but it went from 400 to 875 in the last 6 weeks. And what caused it was that's when Russia invaded Afghanistan. So it's always been the real strength or backbone, I would say, to gold is, geopolitical. Who's going to survive? That sort of thing. So right now you're getting into this consolidation period. You're not getting a crash because, a lot of people are looking around, there's maybe peace deals, things of this nature. But honestly, none of them are going to really survive. Just in Thailand this morning, a Thai soldier stepped on a mine, and all right, let's go get those Cambodians again. It's around the world. What our computer has shown that yes, we're going into World War III, but this is not like Hitler invading Poland. This is global. Okay, so I would say the resentments, no matter where you look at, if it's Pakistan, India, Israel, the Gaza area, Iran, everywhere. Russia, Ukraine, NATO, China, Taiwan. There isn't a single place where you don't see it. Okay, we're even seeing it in South America now. So when you get this sort of destabilization, all right, and we're into this perpetual sovereign debt crisis, which is also not sustainable. All right, so you're looking at undermining basically the entire world monetary system. I know people, keep bashing the dollar, but honestly, the dollar is going to be the last thing standing. Europe is far worse. Asia's, it gets to be a basket case. So, and I know people have been talking about BRICS, but, BRICS is not going to displace the dollar. What's behind the dollar? It is basically that the U.S. has the largest consumer-based economy, so everybody's got to sell to us. Germany's got to sell their BMWs, Japan's got to sell their Toyotas, and that's going to be priced in dollars. All right. In addition to that, you have all these emerging markets, various different countries. You can go on eBay and you'll see that China even issued bonds in British pounds before 1914. Because that was the financial capital. So everybody issues in dollars today because this is where they got to come to sell it. All right, so you're not looking at the demise of the dollar because of the debt or inflation or something like that. What you must understand here is that historically, you can keep kicking this can down the road on the debt issue. It could be, $50 quadrillion. It doesn't matter. All right. What matters is as long as there's somebody at the door still buying the next tranche. So that's confidence. When you start undermining the confidence that you have in a government and you don't buy their debt, that's when the crisis comes. That's first materializing both in Japan and in Europe. You just had the finance ministers of both France and UK hint they might need a bailout from the IMF. All right, that is indicative of what I'm talking about. The fact that they even have to say that suggests that the line at the door to buy new debt is diminishing. And that's when the crash comes, and that's what why Europe and NATO, they're pushing for war all the time. because it's really a debt crisis. And their choice in Europe is that you fail, and the people are going to be picking up pitchforks and coming for your ass. All right. So it's better that you oh, it's Putin, Putin, Putin. Oh, he wants to invade Europe. You know, he does not. Lavrov even came out, we'll guarantee we're not interested in going in NATO. Why? Because there's nothing there to get. All right, Japan went into Manchuria to get assets. You know, what if Putin went into Europe, what's he going to get? Absolutely nothing. They got to buy their energy from them. They have no gold. They have no tangible assets. You're going to walk into France, and France is going to say, okay, you're going to pay our pensions now? That's it.
Here's our debt. Have fun.
Yeah, they have nothing. You know, it's better off you step back, just wait, because they're falling all by themselves, the same as communism did. All right, these Marxist agendas, they don't work. Sorry, long term, they just don't work. As Maggie Thatcher said, you know, socialism works until you run out of other people's money. And it's very true. So gold is basically the neutral position. You know, you heard a lot of people saying, oh, gee, central banks are buying gold. Oh, they're bullish. No, they're not. They don't care if it goes up or down. The whole issue is, you know, you can buy Confederate bonds on eBay. All right? Bonds are worthless if the country loses. Who's going to win? All right? I can tell you our computer says Europe will not win. All right, but Europe is the worst of all. As you know, I was called in to help create the euro. And I warned them that you have to consolidate the debt if you wanted to compete with the dollar. And Helmut Kohl was the Chancellor of Germany, and he wouldn't allow that to happen because he said, before he died, he said if he knew he let the German people vote on joining the euro, he would have lost 7-3. So he took Germany into the euro with no vote. So much for democracy, right? And he thought the Germans would be upset about consolidating the debt, that they would be bailing out Greece or Italy or whatever. So he said no consolidation. Now, as a trader, I'm not an academic. I said, look, if you don't consolidate the debt, this is not going to work. And just look at what happened when Greece got in trouble in 2010. And you can read the chapter 1931 in Herbert Hoover's memoirs. Same thing. He said capital acted like a loose cannon on the deck of in a tempest, you know, firing off in every which direction. They didn't know where it was going next. That's what you're looking at. Now, because they didn't consolidate the debt, all right, if France goes, you know, needs an IMF bailout, what are the traders going to do? The first thing you do is you look at all the banks, because their reserves are individual government debt. There is no federal debt, okay? So they're going to look at the banks and say, oh, who has the most French debt? Short that one. So you're looking at a banking crisis, all right? Then on top of that, you got a pension crisis because 70% of the pensions must by law have government debt. So that's what I mean. They get into trouble and all these people are going to be picking up their pitchforks and storming their parliaments, all right? In the United States, our reserves for banks are federal debt, not California, not Illinois. If California goes bust, the traders will do the same thing. Who's next? Oh, Illinois. Okay, so this is why central banks have been buying the gold, because it's a coin flip who still survives. You know, the German debt is showing weakness. So it's systemic.
Can I jump in there, Martin, real quick? Just based on something you just said, like, why aren't Western nations then buying gold?
Mainly because they are broke.
Okay.
And often, look, I've dealt with governments for 50 years. And I've always said one thing: there are no mirrors in government. When there's a problem, we are the problem. They never look at themselves. All right. I was called in to the Presidential Commission, the Brady Commission, for the '87 crash. I didn't want to go. All right. I had friends call, if you don't go, they're going to come take our computers. I got them to at least not attack the private sector. And if you read the report, I said, look, G5 started, you stood up, you said you're going to devalue the dollar by 40%. I warned them they would cause a crash in 2 years. They go, oh, why? Because you sold a third of the national debt to Japan. You're now going to devalue it. They're going to sell. Well, why would they? Because they're going to lose money, you idiot. So if you read the Brady Commission report, you can see what I'm talking about. At the end, it just says they didn't do anything to anybody, and they just said, well, we think foreign exchange had something to do with it. That's it. Okay? They're not going to blame the government. That's what I mean. There's no mirrors in government. So they don't see themselves as the problem. They are looking for an escape valve, and that's war with Russia. And it's I don't know what else to say. I mean, they don't care about us, the country. It's about, how do I retain power? I got this election coming up. That's it. So China, yes, they've been, buying gold. Why? Because you had the idiot Blinken, Biden's, a real neocon. He's the one that put the sanctions on Russia, removing them from SWIFT. That was the stupidest decision ever. Why? Because then it raised a red flag to everybody else. All right? If you don't do what I command, well, I will remove you from SWIFT. He even threatened China. The idiot. All right? China said, okay, thank you very much. They started dumping U.S. debt in $50 billion tranches. All right? These people do not understand the world economy. You got modern monetary theory, complete joke. All right? I warned them back then. They were going into quantitative easing and buying in 30-year bonds. I said, it's not going to work. Oh, well, why? Because you're assuming a domestic economy. You're assuming everybody that has a 30-year bond you're buying in to try and lower mortgage rates, you're assuming they're American. They're not. Sorry. All right. China, just look at them. They said, thank you very much. They dumped all their 30s and they moved to 5 years or less. We are in a global economy. All your theories that these people use are domestic. Oh, if the Fed raises interest rates, this will, it doesn't do anything. All right? The central banks have lost control. Raising interest rates, oh, it's going to lower inflation? No, it makes it. Why? Because, look, when Keynes came up with that, it was the 30s. U.S. had a balanced budget. So, yes, then raising interest rates, guess what? We were the 99%. Today, we're not. The governments are. So you raise interest rates to fight inflation? Do you really think somebody in Congress says, oh, gee, the Fed wants us to spend less? Let's cut spending. Not going to happen. All right? I mean, so, this is why you have countries, at least the ones on the outside, not Europe, not the U.S., buying gold. Because they are just looking at this, and it's a roulette game. am I going to bet on red or am I going to bet on black? You know what I mean? The neutral at this stage in the game is gold. And don't take it that they're bullish. They're not investors. Okay? They don't care if it goes down. They're not going to sell. Okay? So they're basically just trying to get rid of government debt. So instead of the reserves being, U.S. debt, they used to buy 10% of our national debt, hold it, no more. All right? You can't threaten them with war and then say, oh, gee, you want to buy some more of my bonds so I can buy some missiles to shoot you? It's just, honestly, sometimes I just look at, I get called in by Washington once in a while, and it's just like I'm in La La Land or something. I mean, half the time I think I get called, have you changed your mind yet? That's about it.
They're just looking for confirmation of what they're already doing.
It's not. The only one that does what I actually say that I got to be careful with is China. I had just made an off-the-cuff remark. I said, if I were you, I wouldn't buy debt from the New York bankers. I would tell the Treasury, you want to buy direct. They did it in a week. I was like, oh my God. I'm not used to a government doing actually what I say.
In that short period of time.
Even long term, they don't. Look, back in 1980, going to 81, when Volcker was raising interest rates to 14% or whatever, I was young, naive. I met with the Treasury. I said, guys, the national debt's going to double by the end of the decade at these kind of interest rates. And they calmly said to me, yes, Marty, but, we'll be paying back with cheaper dollars. I said, okay, so you know what you're doing now. I think that was my first wake-up call. It's like you're not dealing with a rational person. And governments are, a politician in particular, is only interested in the next election, not long-term. I don't give a shit what happens in 20 years. I'm not going to be here. I took my son-in-law, to Capitol Hill. I said, you sure you want to see what I see? Yeah, no. I said, okay, fine. He's working for us. So I said, you can come with me. I took him in. By the time we're meetings all day long, leaving, walking out, and he goes, holy shit, these people don't know anything. I said, I told you. It's just, you have to understand the government is not there for you, they're there for them. And these guys, 97, when the Asian currency crisis, I was the first one to be called in by the Bank of China. So I went over there. When I got back, Treasury calls me, Fed calls me, gee, what was it like? You're the first one to be there. And I said, very interesting. I understood why they called me and not somebody from Harvard. They were all traders. They had sent these guys out, and they worked on the dealing desks in New York, London, Tokyo. Then they went back to run the bank. And so I said, very interesting. They only hire people with experience. Whereas at the Fed, honestly, they got more PhDs than I think any institution in the world, and they don't know how to chew gum and walk at the same time. If you don't have experience, I think as a trader, you're never going to see what is really going on. It's all theory all the time. Well, gee, if we raise interest rates, they'll do this. It doesn't work. Just look at it. How many times is the market, they raised rates, the market didn't go down, or they lowered rates just like recently, and the market, didn't do anything, and they go, oh, well, it was already factored in. Well, how do we determine when it's factored in and when it's not factored in?
It's one of my favorite questions to ask on the program. Is like, what is priced in right now? Because nobody really knows whatever is priced in. Like, not even in gold right now. To be honest. So
the only thing you could say what's priced in with gold is that one, the stupid move with BRICS, and sanctions with Russia and all that stuff, and two, it's war. Let's be honest here. Our computer shows we are going into World War III. And this is not something like Hitler invading Poland. This is everywhere. I mean, I posted on my site, I got a call for a briefing. They wanted to debrief me on what happens with Russia. So I went. I said, "You're calling me in to debrief, tell me what you're doing?" What? I thought that was kind of strange. And when I got there, I was actually asked to write the peace plan for Russia. And I was shocked, to put it mildly. And I said, "Is this sanctioned?" I'm thinking, am I being asked by a clandestine group to write something against Trump or something? And they said, "No, it's sanctioned. And you were approved to be called in." Lo and behold, what I then discover is that they didn't even have a peace plan. But they knew I knew, we got offices everywhere from China to, Middle East. So they knew, I have contacts everywhere. And I was even asked, use your back channels. They wanted me to create a plan that I said that Putin would accept. I said, fine. So it's free. You can download it off our site. But the fact that I was even called in to write it was indicative of a problem. The problem is that the Trump administration is, in my opinion, under siege from the neocons. You take the Secretary of Treasury. Most people, they never heard of him. Bassett, he is, if you pull back the curtain, he is basically, he was the brains behind Soros. He's the one that did the architect and sold the idea to short the British pound, which made Soros famous. Okay? It wasn't Soros. I traded against Soros plenty of times. Not that good of a guy, I'm telling you. But even the movie that they did on me, The Forecaster, one guy says he asked Goldman Sachs about me. He said, we always thought we could take him out, but he usually won. I mean, he left Soros in 2000. He was there with everybody else and looking to manipulate the markets on Russia. You can look it up. Soros, when I said, look, Russia's going to collapse, they didn't want to believe me. They thought they were paying all the bribes, IMF, everybody else. Oh, the IMF will never let that happen. I said, I'm sorry. I advise the people the IMF go to for money. All right. And it collapsed, and you can look it up. Soros lost $2 billion on that trade. He is basically a dyed-in-the-wool neocon. He's anti, Putin, I think, because basically he lost $2 billion back then. But that's just my opinion. I can't get into this.
Grudge.
I think so. Most of these people are. If you look at Madeleine Albright, she is the one that brought NATO to attack Serbia. Then you got Victoria Nuland. You got John McCain. And you even got Blinken. All right? Yeah. But if you look at Victoria Nuland, Blinken, and Garland, 3 people in the Biden administration. Look at their backgrounds. All 3 claim that their families were from the Balkan area, and all 3 claim that their families are persecuted by Russians. How do 3 people with the same historical background get into the Biden administration? This is what I think our computer's warning about, and why gold has got a base to it. Yes, it's consolidating. I don't see a crash, because this, as they say, it ain't over till the fat lady sings. All right. And
maybe Martin, to follow up here, just to jump in, because we got 2 minutes left real quick. Timeline. Like I mentioned in the intro, it feels like we're in the eye of a hurricane. You said we're consolidating, I think. When does the wind pick up again?
It looks to be after probably January next year. In most of these cases, you're looking at basically a 3-month, consolidation type thing. But our computer's showing war next year, and I think that's going to be the real catalyst, and that's what's giving the bid to gold. All right, so just keep that in mind, that it's not going to crash and go back down to 2000 or something like that. I don't see that. In order to do something like that, you'd have to have really peace. Okay, I don't see it in the Middle East. I don't see it in Ukraine. China, Taiwan, Korea, and I'll tell you what I warned them about. I said, if I was on the other side, I would attack Taiwan. North Korea goes into the south and attacks Japan. Iran attacks Israel, and Russia takes on NATO. What are you going to do then? Do you have troops to handle 4 fronts? I don't think so.
No.
I mean, that's how Napoleon lost. You've just pissed off most of the world. What else can I say? It's
no.
That's basically what you're looking at.
Exactly. No, and we'll put on that bombshell, Martin. We'll actually end the conversation as well. Like, I loved your insights. Like, I let you talk, but that was so insightful. You ticked all the boxes for me. We ticked all the topics I wanted to touch with you on. Super insightful. Tremendously appreciate your time, Martin. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can we send our audience, if they don't know by now, where to find you?
ArmstrongEconomics.com. You can go there. It's free. We don't sell advertising. You don't have to put in an email or get 50, emails per day. Gee, you want to buy some swampland in Florida or something?
No, you should start a Substack and just charge for it. Martin, I tremendously appreciate your time. Your insights are highly, highly appreciated. Thanks so much for coming on SOAR Financially. And we'll get you back on in January, or maybe early February 1st, to see where we're at. So
yeah, it's just, pay attention to what's going on. That's where we're headed. It's just really a mess, and everything depends upon confidence.
Yeah.
So right now, you got the consolidation. People saying, oh, well, maybe there'll be war, or maybe there'll be just peace. Sorry, no peace, and you'll see what happens.
Fantastic. Martin, thank you so much. Tremendously appreciate it. Everybody else, thank you so much for watching. Really curious what you're thinking is going to happen. Are we in a consolidation phase? How are you acting in the markets as well? Put that in the comments down below. I do want to hear from you. And if you haven't done so, hit that like and subscribe button. It means a lot to us, and we tremendously appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe out there.